Welcome back. Today we're watching Fallout, a show that proves the only thing worse than a nuclear apocalypse is the HOA fees in a vault. We start in the golden age of delusion, where the sky is blue, the grass is green, and the property values are high enough to justify murder. The locals are celebrating Labor Day by beating a robot to death. It is a heartwarming display of job security anxiety and the office space printer treatment. On the tube, we have Mr. House, a man who looks like he was born in a tuxedo and breastfed scotch. He is talking about settling disputes, which is corporate speak for I have a giant laser. And here is Cooper Howard, back when he had a nose and skin that didn't look like beef jerky. He is watching his own future obsolescence in a bar that smells like regret. The sheriff is not impressed. He has that I am too old for this look, mostly because he is realizing his pension plan is about to be vaporized by a mushroom cloud. They decide to take this conversation to the parking lot, the traditional venue for all high-level business negotiations and shady drug deals. He pops the trunk to reveal $31 million. That is a lot of paperweights. In the wasteland, this is excellent kindling, but right now, it is supposed to be a bribe. He offers them a choice, the money or this little thing. It looks like a garage door opener for a garage that holds your soul. He sticks it on the sheriff's neck. He calls it market research, but I'm pretty sure it is just a shock collar for humans who ask too many questions. Then he hands Cooper a bat. Because nothing says corporate synergy like bludgeoning your best friend in an alleyway for a trunk full of cash. Cooper realizes he is in a bad movie. He tries to refuse the script changes, but the sheriff is currently being remote controlled like a cheap drone. The suit guy gets too close and pop. He loses his mind, literally. That is a lot of strawberry jam on the pavement. I hope he had a good dry cleaner. Cooper is left holding the guy's eye. It is looking at him, judging his career choices, and wondering why nobody saw that coming. And that brings us to the title card. Fallout. Because subtle metaphors are for cowards, we cut from an exploding head to the most dangerous thing in the wasteland. A middle management performance review. He doubles down with a feasibility study, which is corporate speak for please go away and pretend to work. That is the smile of a woman who is one feasibility study away from stabbing someone with a pencil. Meanwhile, Chet is busy being the vault's resident doormat. He tries to explain that he's just a friend, but the overseer is too busy not caring to listen. Chet, my guy, you are so deep in the friend zone you're practically a piece of furniture. The overseer leaves him with some generic advice, solving absolutely nothing. Classic management. Stephanie is relieved it's just Chet, mostly because she knows he's harmless. She starts peeling an orange with a combat knife, which is definitely a normal and well-adjusted way to eat fruit. But Stephanie decides his new title is unpaid nanny. He tries to protest, reminding her for the 100th time that he has no biological connection to this child. But Stephanie uses her superpower, selective hearing. It gets worse. Apparently, the entire vault has collectively decided to name the kid Chet Jr. Oof, that's not just an insult, that's identity theft. He tries to explain that the name carries the heavy emotional baggage of his father's starvation, so Stephanie politely ends the debate by murdering the table. And just like that, Chet realizes he prefers living over arguing. She goes from knife threat to customer service smile in 0.5 seconds. Run, Chet, run. Let's worry about baby names. The Ghoul is dealing with slightly heavier problems. He hits her with the no shit response because he stopped being surprised by human cruelty about 200 years ago. But then something catches his eye. A box of sugar bombs, 100 daily value of sugar and radiation, is the only thing in this wasteland with a longer shelf life than him. Suddenly, we cut to black and wake up in a completely different sci-fi movie. A walking tank stomps into the room, looking for the nearest Decepticon to punch. But it's not a soldier. It's just the overseer, looking like he took a wrong turn on the way to a board meeting. He looks absolutely miserable. That is the face of a man who just realized there is no bathroom in that suit. He heads toward the evil corporate headquarters, probably to file a complaint about the air conditioning. He finally peels himself out of the metal shell like a banana. The computer tells him he has 400,000 unread emails. That is my personal nightmare. Most people would just delete the account, but Hank decides to clear the inbox. What a psychopath. He starts the morning routine. Coffee first, world domination second. He struts down the hallway in his boxers to pick out his uniform. He has 50 identical gray suits. He really is the life of the party. He straps on the Pip-Boy, completing the middle management starter pack. He takes the long walk to the comms room to make a very expensive long-distance call. He tunes the radio, probably looking for a station that isn't playing 50s doo-wop on a loop. He reports for duty, letting the void know that he is still alive and ready to file paperwork. He says nobody knows he's there. Buddy, look around. Nobody is anywhere. He claims he's been keeping busy in Vegas, which is code for hiding in a hole while everyone else died. He takes a stroll through the science lab, which is filled with the kind of projects that get you expelled from school. He just yanks a chip out of the neck like he's changing the batteries in a remote. Zero respect for the dead. He admires the miniaturization tech, convinced he can fix everything if he just works hard enough. He promises to finish the job, unaware that the job is actually destroying the world. He thinks he's the hero of the story. Spoiler alert, he is definitely the villain. And with that ominous threat, the credits roll. And for once, the color palette isn't depressing brown or radioactive green. We are in a bustling metropolis that definitely isn't a crater yet. Since this is a flashback in the Fallout universe, you can safely assume everyone we see here is already a ghost. Spoilers, I guess. We spot a mini Maximus, looking surprisingly innocent for a guy who will grow up to have the emotional range of a toaster. They march through town with all the subtlety of a brick in a washing machine, completely ignoring the locals. He is obsessed with the clarity, which is a valid concern when your usual beverage option glows in the dark. The Geiger counter stays silent. In the wasteland, finding water that doesn't give you a third arm is basically winning the lottery. They start talking about the future and having another kid. The writers are laying the tragedy on so thick, I'm surprised they aren't drowning in it. Enjoy it while it lasts, folks. The plot armor budget was spent entirely on the dog in the last episode. To them, these people are just NPCs in a game they are winning. And then, this legend drops the line. The meme. The one sentence that triggers every fanboy in a 10-mile radius. Patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter, he said it. He actually said the thing. Although, judging by the sweat and the 1,000-yard stare, he might not be joking. That suit is basically a walking oven, which means it is absolutely doomed. Nice knowing you, Shady Sands. This is the exact moment his childhood innocence is replaced by a burning desire for heavy ordnance. Far away from the cool power armor, we cut to the world's most depressing office party. Stephanie is already done with this. She survived the apocalypse for this. I'd ask for a refund. They are standing in a hallway that looks like a server room designed by a claustrophobic architect. He tries to explain the situation with the confidence of a substitute teacher who just lost control of the class. He drops the bomb that it's been 200 years, which is a long time to wait for a bathroom break. Norm takes the news well, by which I mean he looks like he's trying to calculate how much back pay he's owed. And then, the moment we've all been waiting for. The big reveal of the mastermind behind it all. It's a Roomba. A Roomba with a pickle brain in a jar. Behold, the superior race. Butter Skins has really let himself go. He looks like a science fair project that got a C-. The crowd goes mild. They were promised a glorious future, and they got a kitchen appliance with a god complex. Stephanie demands to speak to the manager, unaware that the manager is currently capable of vacuuming under the sofa. The brainbot tries to assert dominance, proving that even without a body, middle management is absolutely insufferable. She realizes someone ate her crackers. Honestly, in the grand scheme of things, that is a valid reason to riot. Suddenly, the editor gets bored and cuts to a completely different genre. Welcome to the noir detective portion of the evening. It's Agent Cooper driving the world's saddest go-kart through a concrete intestine. Look at that focus. He is driving 5 miles per hour, but in his head, he is in a high-speed chase. He's commuting to work in the apocalypse. The traffic is great, but the scenery is a bit repetitive. We cut to a much less civilized part of the wasteland, where Maximus is currently serving as a human mob. He is hitting that thing like it owes him money. We get it. You work out. Calm down. Maximus is down there reconsidering every life choice that led to this moment. He's got a little bit of ketchup on his face. He wipes his chin and gives the bald guy the I didn't hear no bell look, which is a bold strategy for someone with 0 wins. The knight looks genuinely offended that his punching bag is standing up again. Bringing a blade to a fist fight? Classy move. This guy definitely cheats at board games. Maximus realizes the difficulty setting just went from hard to nightmare, but he's too stubborn to back down now. He gets blocked, spun around, and treated like a ragdoll. It's not even a fight. It's a tutorial level where Maximus is the NPC. He tries to grapple, but he's wrestling a bear. It goes exactly as poorly as you'd expect, and now he's in the chokehold. The universal sign for stop moving or you go to sleep. His face is turning a lovely shade of purple. He is really committing to the color scheme. The crowd cheers for his near-death experience. This is the Brotherhood of Steel, folks. A toxic work environment is part of the benefits package. Maximus tries to find a hole to crawl into, but the floor is solid concrete, so he just has to sit there and marinate in the shame. But suddenly, the garage door starts to open, interrupting the bullying session. A massive vertebra descends from the heavens. It's loud, it's dusty, and it's completely ruining the mood of the fight club. Nothing says I have arrived like blowing dirt into everyone's eyes. The recruits are awestruck. They've never seen anything this cool that wasn't trying to kill them. Out steps a guy who clearly shops at a different store than the rest of these dirt farmers. He brought a German Shepherd, which automatically makes him the most likable character in the room. He apologizes for the interruption, but he has the smug aura of someone who knows he's the main character of this scene. He introduces himself as a liaison, which is fancy talk for "I'm here to cause problems for your plotline." The elder sits on his throne of scrap metal, looking about as welcoming as a landmine. He welcomes the guest, but the tone suggests he'd rather feed him to the ghouls. The newcomer smiles. He knows something they don't, and he's enjoying every second of it. And right as the political intrigue starts, the episode decides to end. Classic cliffhanger. And apparently we have traveled back in time to when Cooper Howard still had a nose, a career, and a questionable taste in beverages. He hears the director's cue. Or maybe it's just the sound of his dignity leaving the building as he prepares to shill for the end of the world. Cooper decides to mingle with the proletariat, probably to make sure they aren't planning to unionize on their juice break. He spots a kid slacking off. You can't sleep on the job, Timmy. The apocalypse waits for no one. Seriously, look at this guy. He has no idea that in 200 years, he is going to be the one needing the heavy concealer. He gives the kid some terrible advice. Take off your safety gloves, because nothing builds character like slicing your hand open on a rusty bottle cap. Cooper promises him big, gross, calloused hands. Just what every mother wants for her child. She is sad because someone called her a name. Let me guess, is it the word of the day? She says she looks like a ghoul. Again with the foreshadowing. We get it. Show. He is going to be a ghoul. Salty is clearly not in the budget today, which is technically true, just not yet. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy with a cowboy hat. He calls a timeout to give a rousing speech to the troops. Listen up, you little tax deductions. He tells them they're lucky. Why? Because outside is scary, but inside, they have a roof and a very well-defended perimeter. One kid points out they don't have water, just soda. Cooper ignores the diabetes risk and pivots to the benefits of not doing push-ups. And then, the punchline. Most kids are dead by this age. Wow, that got dark fast. Nothing sells soda like reminding the audience of infant mortality rates. We fast forward 200 years to see how that cynicism aged, and the answer is poorly. He calls it a civil war, which is wasteland code for everyone is killing everyone over a pile of dirt. Even the dog looks disappointed in the current state of the real estate market. They arrive at a resort, which is just a fancy name for a place where you catch tetanus. The dog judges him for his life choices. He tells the dog he doesn't like her either. Classic deflection from a man whose only friend is a flask. He admits he can't fight two armies alone. A rare moment of humility, or just a hangover talking. Probably both. He heads inside to find some backup, or at least a better drink. And he finds a TV on a unicycle. It wakes up with a face that screams, "I am going to murder you," while singing country music. It's Victor. Or at least, the budget version running on Windows 95. Cooper recognizes the software, probably because he sold his own face to the company for a paycheck. Awkward. The robot claims memory loss, which is convenient when you don't want to explain why you're useless. It mentions Robert House is gone. Turns out all the money in the world couldn't buy him a personality that people actually like. Cooper looks thrilled to hear his old boss kick the bucket. But the robot brings up the cold fusion, reminding him that he's been chasing a battery for 2 centuries. He realizes talking to a toaster is a waste of time and heads out. Meanwhile, the Brotherhood of Steel is preparing for a field trip. Maximus and Thaddeus are looking for a ride. Maximus volunteers to pilot, despite having the qualifications of a potato. This is definitely going to end well. They steal a vertibird and immediately regret it. He flies with the grace of a drunk bumblebee. Thaddeus asks if he's ever flown one, and Maximus tries to hand over the controls. Because nothing says confidence like trying to make the passenger drive the bus mid-flight. Thaddeus starts panicking about the mission and gives a speech about saving the Commonwealth. Spoiler alert, civilization is already gone, buddy. You're just fighting over the scraps. They fly over the mountains, somehow not crashing into them. A signal pops up on the radar, because plot convenience is the best co-pilot. They spot their target in the middle of nowhere and bring it down. Back on the ground, the ghoul is taking a scenic walk. He stops to admire the view, and immediately catches a bullet with his chest. He decides to take a nap. Captain Rodriguez of the NCR. Finally, someone in this show with decent aim. The end of the episode. And apparently we have traveled back in time to the Alaskan front, where the weather is frightful and the visibility is absolutely zero. Inside the tin can is Cooper Howard, looking surprisingly human and significantly less like beef jerky than we are used to. He complains about his armor locking up, which is exactly the kind of reliability you want from a suit that costs more than the GDP of a small country. His buddy screams at him to run, because apparently the billion-dollar walking tank is actually just a very expensive metal coffin. The ambush begins, and the visuals turn into a chaotic light show of doom, panic, and terrible aim. Cooper hits the deck and finds himself staring down the barrel of a soldier who clearly skipped the Mercy class in basic training. But wait, player 3 has entered the game. A Yao Guai decides to interrupt the execution because he prefers his food fresh. Cooper wakes up from his PTSD nap, probably wishing he had a snooze button for traumatic memories. Meanwhile, Maximus is busy doing side quests, standing around in a warehouse looking like a lost refrigerator. He is being lectured by a guy who looks like he cuts his own hair with a spoon, surrounded by the wasteland's least enthusiastic fan club. Later, Maximus stands on the tarmac, trying to look cool in front of his new squire while waiting for his Uber. The bird takes off, defying the laws of physics and aerodynamics simultaneously, which is standard procedure for Bethesda vehicles. Lucy wakes up with a hangover from hell, hooked up to an IV drip in the middle of nowhere. She meets the welcoming committee, who claim to be the new California Republic, but look more like a LARP group on a budget. And look who it is. The Ghoul is chilling in the corner, tied up and looking like a grumpy grandpa at a family reunion he didn't want to attend. He drops some cynical wisdom, because being a jerk is his full-time job, and business is booming. Lucy decides that hanging out with these weirdos is not on her to-do list, so she politely excuses herself from the plotline. She walks away, leaving the Ghoul tied to a chair, which honestly is probably the safest place for him right now. The mood in the vault is tense, mostly because Stephanie Harper has decided to adopt the Bond villain aesthetic with that eye patch. And then there is Chet. Look at him. He looks like a man who is constantly worried that he left the oven on in a house he doesn't own. They march into Vault 32, probably hoping the cleaning crew got the bloodstains out of the carpet this time. Meanwhile, on the surface, the real estate market is still crashing. It is just miles of irradiated dust and shattered dreams. He checks the horizon with his little pirate telescope, probably looking for a moisturizer salesman. You are dry, my guy. They keep moving towards civilization, or at least the closest thing to it that doesn't involve eating your neighbors. He spots something in the distance, likely another opportunity to be cynical and shoot someone. They pass a dead Mr. Handy robot. Poor guy probably expired waiting for a software update. The Ghoul decides to impart some wisdom, which usually involves telling Lucy she is going to die in a ditch. He mentions a town called Philly, which sounds adorable until you realize it's basically a landfill with a mayor. They arrive at Philly. It is a charming little hamlet constructed entirely from tetanus and bad decisions. A dog runs by, happy as a clam, completely unaware that he is the only living thing here that isn't radioactive. The Ghoul looks right at home, mostly because he looks like he was dug up from the local cemetery. Lucy struts in like she owns the place, beaming with that vault dweller optimism that usually gets people killed. Naturally, the welcoming committee arrives. This guy has a guitar on his back and a death wish in his heart. And just like that, he is now a unicycle. Nice shot, Vault Girl, back. We rejoin our favorite dysfunctional duo, Lucy and the Ghoul, taking a lovely midnight stroll through what appears to be a neon-lit graveyard. Look at the Ghoul. He isn't even scared. He's just annoyed that this monster is interrupting his drug schedule. That is the face of a man who has run out of patience and ran away. Lucy frantically checks her gear, probably looking for a monster repellent spray that definitely doesn't exist in the wasteland. The monster decides it hates sedans and smashes their cover to pieces. So much for stealth. They scramble away like cockroaches when the kitchen light turns on, realizing that fighting a dinosaur with a pistol is a bad business strategy. With no other options, they dive into a hole in the ground, out of the frying pan, into the sewer. Classic. Majun decides that now is the perfect time for a vacation, leaving her entire inventory unguarded because security is just a suggestion in the apocalypse. Lucy arrives, hoping to do some honest shopping like a good vault dweller. She checks the price of medicine and realizes inflation hit the wasteland harder than the bombs did. She counts her life savings and realizes she is about 1,000 caps short. So she decides to embrace the free market by breaking and entering. She hears footsteps and immediately regrets her life of crime. She hides next to a barrel of very chunky tomato soup. That is a health code violation. She gets caught by the manager, who apparently lost his shirt in the war. He decides to negotiate with a revolver, but Lucy hits him with a tranquilizer dart before he can explain his return policy. He hits the floor like a sack of wet laundry. Back in the past, Cooper Howard walks into a casino that hasn't been nuked yet. He meets the man, the myth, the mustache, Robert House. Look at this guy. He looks like he would sell his own grandmother for a one-stock increase. House explains that he knows everything, which is usually code for I am the villain. Cooper realizes he might be on the wrong side of history. Meanwhile, underground, Norm is doing the only actual work in the entire vault. He hacks the mainframe, searching for answers, and he finds the secret sauce, forced evolutionary virus. That sounds healthy, Back on the surface, Maximus and Thaddeus are having a little lover's quarrel. Maximus decides to win the argument by hugging Thaddeus' neck really hard. Lucy is stumbling around, looking like she had a few too many Nuka-Colas. She finds the ghoul taking a nap and decides to be a good Samaritan. She gives him the magic juice instead of shooting him, because she is pathologically nice. Suddenly, a creepy telemarketer appears in the doorway. He claims he was sent by her father, which is definitely a lie. The ghoul wakes up and decides to end the conversation the old-fashioned way. The man decides to inspect the pavement with his face. He is going to need an aspirin for that. Lucy hits the deck because she has finally learned that standing near windows is a serious health hazard. This is what happens when you skip your magic medicine juice. His body is basically trying to uninstall itself. His brain starts buffering and sends us into a quick flashback of his wife, Barb. Memory lane continues. She is wiping his forehead, which ironically, he still had back then. He looks devastated, probably because he knows the writers are about to cut back to the misery. She is just lying there paralyzed. She doesn't know if he is going to hug her or eat her. He just looms over her, letting the creepiness marinate for a few more seconds. We begin with a little light entertainment, a high-budget commercial for nuclear annihilation. Cooper Howard is pitching the end of the world like it's a timeshare opportunity in Florida. The executives are concerned that the explosions won't look pretty enough on the billboards. This guy, Bud, suggests they intentionally break water chips to see who dies first. He calls it science. I call it being a sociopath with a spreadsheet. And look who it is. Mr. House. The man, the myth, the mustache. He's here to discuss how to monetize the apocalypse, because capitalism doesn't stop just because the sky is melting. Fast forward a few hundred years, and Cooper is looking a little worse for wear, currently being dragged through town like a bag of mulch. He asks the dog for help, and the dog steals his hat. That is just disrespectful. Meanwhile, Lucy wakes up in what appears to be a 1950s sitcom set, completely ignoring the fact that she is covered in dried ketchup. She walks out and finds two guys cosplaying as Roman soldiers. Standard wasteland fashion, really. She finds Cooper in the kitchen, looking surprisingly not melted and acting like a wholesome dad. This is terrifying considering we know his current hobbies include eating people and shooting grandmas. He handcuffs himself to prove he's harmless. Spoiler, he is never harmless. Back in the desert, Maximus and Thaddeus are bonding over a campfire and debating whether to sell the world-saving technology for bottle caps. Back in town, the ghoul is hanging upside down, doing his best impression of a leaking juice box. He decides he's had enough of being a piata and cuts himself down using pure rage and bad dental hygiene. He chugs some magic floor juice and is ready to go back to murdering everyone in the zip code. Finally, back in Vault 33, they are having an election, because democracy is important, even when you live in a hole. The party is crashed by Reg, who marches in looking like he's about to file a formal complaint about the lack of balloons. Betty plays the "for the good of the vault" card, which is politicians speak for "please stop talking, you are embarrassing me." A man has to have a code, and apparently, Reg's code is strictly based on the availability of potato chips. She points out the minor issue of everyone dying of thirst, and questions the logic of feeding dehydrated people salty pretzels. Betty tries to explain that solving a water crisis takes time, but Reg isn't interested in logistics. He wants results, and he wants them covered in salt. Reg corrects her immediately. This is America. Entitlement isn't a bug, it's a feature. He argues that their ancestors survived by looking out for number one. And honestly, looking at the nuclear wasteland outside, he makes a solid point. He declares he is done being ashamed. He is loud, he is proud, and he is probably extremely thirsty. He knows the game is rigged. The 31 heirs are different, probably because they actually get to drink water, but Reg snaps. He screams what everyone is thinking. Nobody cares about the weevils, Betty. Read the room. Betty realizes she's losing the room. Reg sees his opening. He needs a power move. It is gross. It is aggressive. It is surprisingly effective political theater. Betty watches in silence, realizing that democracy was a terrible mistake. The end of the episode kicked things off with a lovely winter jog through the woods, which is usually a bad sign in this show. They decide to inspect the snow up close, probably to check for yellow patches. And right on cue, the fun police arrive in their flying metal death trap. A tin can man drops in to remind everyone that hiking without a permit is punishable by laser fire. He delivers a very aggressive vibe check, which wakes her up from that delightful memory. She checks the mirror and realizes she forgot to put her face on. Literally. I have seen some gross things in this wasteland, but brushing your teeth next to a gaping skull hole is a new level of morning breath. Back in the past, she tries to escape to Canada, because apparently the apocalypse respects international borders. In the present, she steps over the local law enforcement, who seems to be taking a permanent nap on the job. We jump back to the pre-war era, where the buildings are shiny and the corporate evil is subtle. Cooper is doing some light corporate espionage, listening to a podcast about how to destroy the world. He teams up with young Moldaver, who hasn't discovered her love for Raider fashion yet. They make their grand infiltration on the world's slowest golf cart. Austin Powers will be proud. They encountered the final boss of this level, the janitor. Meanwhile, the Ghoul is out for a stroll with some red shirts, which historically ends well for everyone involved. Negotiations break down immediately when he realizes these guys are holding out on him. Far below the radioactive dust, Stephanie Harper is staring at the massive door of Vault 32. She glances around nervously, probably expecting a raider to jump out, or worse, a neighbor with a tuna casserole. She plugs in her Pip-Boy to hack the lock, because physical keys are apparently too low-tech for the apocalypse. Naturally, it is Betty Pearson, lurking in the shadows like she is waiting to hand out a speeding ticket. Stephanie asks if she is being spied on, which is adorable. Honey, you live in a tin can. Everyone is spying on everyone. She says Stephanie reminds her of her old self, which is not a compliment coming from the lady who runs the vault like a cult. Scared of what? Her ability to accessorize with medical gauze? She is about as threatening as a damp sponge. Stephanie snaps back, reminding Betty that she learned a few things before she went into the freezer. Stephanie demands the water she was promised, 50% production, or she will riot. Betty stares her down, unblinking, looking like a lizard in a blue jumpsuit. She says she wants no part of Stephanie's schemes. She just wants peace, which is exactly what a villain says right before they purge the dissidents. Stephanie realizes she has lost this round and grabs her card of secrets. She reminds Betty that the deal was for the water, desperate to have the last word. Betty gives her a look that says, "I am the manager," and tells her she cannot speak for the future, because the future is bigger than them. Or maybe because Betty plans to be the only one in it. And Betty watches her go, probably calculating exactly how much water she can save by not feeding her. The end of the episode. We start the finale with a calm, relaxing morning. Just kidding, the entire neighborhood is being deleted by artillery. Everyone else is busy fighting for their lives, playing a high-stakes game of tag where you're it means you die. Meanwhile, this aspiring cosplayer decides to skip the fighting and check the lost and found. Look at this guy. He literally died at his desk. That is some serious work ethic, or just terrible time management. He finds a sticky note on the corpse, probably a receipt for the cake. It says, "I am Caesar," which is helpful, because otherwise he looks just like every other skeleton in the wasteland. Thanks for the label, buddy. But before he can update his resume, the assistant manager walks in wearing a metal bucket on his head. This is the awkward moment where they both realize the boss isn't signing paychecks anymore. He decides to improvise. Because in the wasteland, honesty doesn't get you the big tent, it gets you deleted. He struts out with the inherent confidence of a man who just found the answer key to the test. The crowd goes absolutely feral. They're cheering for him like he just invented sliced bread. Look at them. They have no idea what's going on, but they love screaming. Cults are so easy to start these days. And with that successful corporate takeover complete, the show remembers it has a title sequence. The episode resumes with Maximus strutting through the apocalypse in his stolen power armor, walking with the inherent confidence of a man who hasn't paid for his car, because a Deathclaw immediately tackles him, proving that nature does not care about your steel pajamas. Thaddeus watches from the safety of the high ground, realizing that his gun is purely decorative at this point. He briefly considers helping, but decides that reloading his weapon for 3 business days is a better use of his time. Meanwhile, at the observatory, Hank McLean is busy trying to unlock the secrets of the universe with a glorified USB drive. Lucy looks skeptical, probably because her dad is acting like a used car salesman for the end of the world. He hits the deck, leaking a significant amount of strawberry jam onto the pristine concrete floor. He casually mentions that he would have aimed for the head, but he's feeling generous today. Hank groans in pain, realizing that his plot armor has officially been revoked. She picks up her dart gun, which is adorable, considering she's bringing a toy to a cannon fight. He stares her down with eyes that have seen 200 years of bad decisions. Lucy looks between her bleeding father and the cowboy zombie, realizing her family tree is rotten. He reminds Hank that he isn't in charge anymore, mostly because he's currently bleeding out on the floor. She clutches the artifact, wondering if she can trade it for a therapy session. And just like that, the family reunion turns into a hostage negotiation. Maximus finally wakes up from his power nap, probably hoping the last 24 hours were just a fever dream caused by eating expired cram. I am pretty sure that is not FDA approved. But hey, who needs anesthesia when you have grit and a leather belt to bite on? Maximus takes a stroll through the Hall of Pain, realizing that glory mostly involves screaming, bleeding, and missing limbs. He heads straight for the principal's office to see if he is getting a gold star or a court-martial. Inside, Elder Quintus is doing his best impression of a moody wizard, standing in the dark to hide the fact that he definitely lost the fight. The old man is just vibing in the gloom. Nothing says leadership like brooding in a room that smells like ozone and regret. Quintus starts his villain monologue early. He talks about virtue and unity, which is rich coming from a guy who runs a cult of toaster worshippers. Maximus asks what is going on, because critical thinking was not part of the basic training curriculum. He realizes that being nice in the wasteland gets you absolutely nowhere except maybe a shallow grave next to a radioactive puddle. Introducing Quintus the Destroyer, it is edgier, it is darker, and it sounds like a gamer tag chosen by a 12-year-old on Xbox Live. He unrolls a scroll like he is about to teach a history class, but instead of geography, he reveals the ultimate cheat code, and that is the season cliffhanger, folks. War never changes, but the budget for CGI robots definitely goes up. Well guys, that's it. If you enjoyed watching me suffer through this masterpiece of bad decisions, like and subscribe. I'm going to therapy. See you in the next one.